Listen to me carefully, because this isn't going to be soft, it isn't going to be sugar-coated, and it isn't going to be easy to hear. If you want to live your life ruled by emotion, tossed around like a small boat in a storm, then keep doing what you're doing. But if you want to build something powerful, if you want to stand tall, if you want to own your life, then you need to stop being a slave to your feelings. Leave the feeling to the girls. That doesn't mean you bury your heart. That doesn't mean you never care. What it means is this: you don't let your feelings dictate your future. Feelings are fleeting. They change with the weather. They shift with the smallest thing. One moment you feel like working, the next you don't. One moment you feel strong, the next you feel weak. But champions, leaders, builders, they don't depend on feelings. They depend on standards. You need standards that are unshakable, standards that don't move whether it rains, whether you're tired, whether someone betrayed you, or whether you feel like giving up. Standards that stand when your emotions crumble. Because if you keep letting feelings decide, you'll never be consistent. And if you're not consistent, you'll never achieve anything worth remembering. Think about it. How many times have you said, I'll start tomorrow? How many times have you skipped the gym because you didn't feel like it? How many times have you stayed silent when you knew you should have spoken because you didn't feel confident enough? Every time you choose your feelings over your standards, you shrink. Every time you give in, you weaken the muscle of discipline. But when you truly decide that your standards are stronger than your feelings, everything changes. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop asking, do I feel like it? And you start declaring, this is who I am. This is what I do, no matter what. A discipline doesn't care about feelings. Success doesn't care about feelings. Your goals don't care about feelings. The clock is ticking whether you're motivated or not. The world is moving whether you're inspired or not. If you sit around waiting to feel right before you take action, you'll be waiting your whole life. It's not about waiting to feel like it. It's about acting despite not feeling like it. That's where power is born. That's where men are forged. That's where greatness is created. Leave the feeling to the girls. You act, you move, you execute, you follow through, you finish what you start, because feelings come and go, but legacies are built by people who act regardless of feelings. So ask yourself right now, what's the standard you've been compromising on because of your feelings? Where in your life have you let emotion dominate execution? Where have you been soft when you should have been solid? Decide now, this is the moment that you leave the feelings behind. You rise on standards, you rise on discipline, you rise on commitment. The world doesn't reward the ones who feel. It rewards the ones who finish. Feelings are fleeting, standards are permanent, and when you truly internalize this principle, it shifts the way you operate in every area of your life. Feelings rise and fall like waves, temporary and unpredictable, but standards are like the foundation of a skyscraper, unmoving, unbreakable, and unshaken by the storms around it. The reason so many people fail to break through to the next level in life isn't because they lack ability or talent, but because they keep relying on how they feel in the moment instead of deciding once and for all what their standard will be regardless of circumstance. If you depend on feelings to take action, you'll never achieve anything extraordinary because feelings don't last, feelings lie, and feelings are not designed to lead. They're designed to be managed. Every single day, life will test you with ups and downs, and in those moments, you'll face a choice. Do you rise to your standard or do you fall to your feeling? A feeling will tell you to stay in bed because you're tired, but a standard demands that you rise because that's who you are. A feeling will tell you to take the easy path, to cut corners, to put it off until tomorrow, but a standard insists that you show up fully now, regardless of how inconvenient it feels. A feeling will whisper excuses, but a standard speaks with authority and refuses to compromise. That's the difference between people who drift through life and people who dominate it. The drifters follow feelings, the dominators obey standards. When you look at the most powerful, resilient, unstoppable people, they're not the ones who never felt tired, never felt afraid, never felt doubtful. They're the ones who didn't let those feelings define them. They installed standards so deeply into their identity that even when the feelings screamed for them to quit, the standard carried them forward. It becomes automatic, almost like breathing. You don't argue with yourself. You don't negotiate with your mood. You don't stop to check whether you feel like it. You simply do it because your standard is who you are, not something you occasionally practice when you're motivated. Feelings can be manipulated by circumstances, by other people, by the environment. A harsh word from someone can ruin your mood. A piece of bad news can crush your motivation. A distraction can throw you off course. But standards are immovable. If you say, I work out every morning no matter what, then the weather doesn't matter, the mood doesn't matter, the excuses don't matter. If you say, I follow through on what I commit to, then your standard becomes the compass, not your feelings. You don't need to ask yourself, do I feel like showing up? Because the standard is already decided for you. The truth is, too many people are trapped in cycles of inconsistency because they haven't elevated their standards above their emotions. They wait to feel inspired before they act. They wait to feel confident before they speak. They wait to feel ready before they move, but feelings never deliver the consistency that greatness requires. If you rely on them, you'll always find yourself starting and stopping, sprinting and collapsing, beginning with excitement and ending with regret. You'll find yourself living life like a roller coaster instead of a straight climb. When you commit to standards, you step into a different level of power. Standards don't fluctuate with the day. Standards don't change based on the weather. Standards don't disappear when you're stressed. They're steady. They're reliable. They make you reliable. When the people around you can't count on their own emotions, they start to count on you because your actions are grounded in something stronger than mood. You become the one who shows up, the one who executes, the one who can be trusted. That's the kind of person who builds trust, builds influence, and builds a life that others can't touch. Imagine for a moment what your life would look like if you stopped letting feelings run the show. Imagine if you no longer needed to feel like working to work, no longer needed to feel like being disciplined to be disciplined, no longer needed to feel like stepping up to step up. How much further ahead would you be if you had followed through every single time regardless of emotion? How much stronger would you be if your standard was always higher than your excuses? The gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't talent. It isn't luck. It isn't opportunity. It's the gap between your feelings and your standards. Every time you choose your standard over your feelings, you strengthen that muscle of discipline, that muscle of self-respect, that muscle of identity. It's like layering steel into your character. You start trusting yourself more because you know you'll follow through. You stop breaking promises to yourself. You stop needing external motivation because your standard itself is the fuel. You don't need someone to hype you up. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need approval because you've already chosen who you are and how you show up no matter what. Feelings are temporary visitors, but standards are permanent residents. Feelings come and go, but standards define you. Feelings are weak leaders, but standards are unshakable guides. And if you want to build a life that outlasts, a legacy that endures, a strength that inspires, then you must decide to stop chasing feelings and start living by standards. Discipline must override emotion because emotion is unreliable, inconsistent, and often deceptive, while discipline is the only thing that guarantees progress regardless of how you feel in the moment. Emotions fluctuate with circumstances. You feel motivated after watching a powerful video, then an hour later you feel tired and distracted. You feel excited about a goal when you first set it, but the excitement fades when the hard work begins. You feel confident when people cheer for you, but you feel insecure the moment you face resistance. If your life is controlled by emotion, you are at the mercy of whatever happens around you. But when discipline overrides emotion, you take back the steering wheel, you decide what gets done, and you follow through no matter what mood you're in. That is where real strength comes from, not in the moments when you feel like doing it, but in the moments when you don't and you still do it anyway. Think about how many times emotions have sabotaged progress. Someone promises themselves they will stick to a diet, but the moment they feel a craving, they give in. Someone commits to waking up early, but when the alarm rings and they feel tired, they hit snooze. Someone swears they will stay focused, but when they feel bored, they open distractions instead. The problem isn't that they lack knowledge or ability. The problem is that they let emotion make the decision. Discipline is the antidote. Discipline says, I do it because I said I would, not because I feel like it. Discipline is the bridge between intention and result, between goal and achievement. The people who achieve greatness are not emotionless robots. They feel the same laziness, fear, and doubt as everyone else. The difference is they don't surrender to those feelings. They let discipline speak louder. Discipline is the voice that says, you're tired, but you're still getting up. You're afraid, but you're still taking the step. You're uninspired, but you're still executing. Discipline overrides the temporary pull of emotion with the permanent pull of commitment. That's why those who are disciplined build lives that outlast moods. Discipline is freedom, while emotion is slavery. When you're ruled by emotions, you are shackled to their constant changes. You're up when you feel good, you're down when you feel bad, and your results are inconsistent because your actions depend on how you feel at any given time. But when discipline rules, you break free. You are no longer a prisoner of I don't feel like it. You are free to act in alignment with your vision rather than your mood. Freedom doesn't come from always doing what feels good in the moment. It comes from mastering yourself so deeply that you can act regardless of how you feel. Emotions are useful indicators, but they are terrible leaders. They can inform you, but they cannot guide you. If you let them lead, they'll take you off the path every time the journey gets hard. But if discipline leads, emotions eventually follow. When you discipline yourself to take consistent action, the emotions of pride, confidence, and fulfillment show up afterward. Too many people wait to feel motivated before they act, but motivation is the reward of action, not the prerequisite. Discipline must come first. Consider the gym as a perfect example. Most people don't feel like working out every day. They wait for the spark of motivation, but motivation is inconsistent. The ones who succeed are the ones who show up whether they feel like it or not. They put in the work. And as a result, they feel stronger, more energized, more motivated after the fact. The emotion follows the discipline. The same is true in business, in relationships, in any pursuit of mastery. The reward of emotion always lags behind the act of discipline. Discipline also builds identity. Every time you choose discipline over emotion, you cast a vote for the person you want to become. When you wake up early despite being tired, you reinforce the identity of someone reliable. When you work even when uninspired, you reinforce the identity of someone consistent. When you act with courage despite fear, you reinforce the identity of someone strong. Slowly, discipline shapes how you see yourself, and that identity becomes unshakable. But when you let emotion dictate your behavior, you weaken that identity. You teach yourself that you can't be trusted, that you break promises to yourself, that your feelings run your life. Discipline builds respect for yourself, and self-respect is the foundation of real confidence. Another truth is that discipline compounds. One act of discipline makes the next one easier. Every time you override an emotion with discipline, you strengthen that mental muscle, and soon it becomes natural. Just as emotions can spiral you downward when you give into them, discipline can spiral you upward when you train it. Consistency breeds momentum. Momentum breeds confidence, and confidence breeds results. But the spark for all of it is discipline. The act of choosing the higher road, even when your emotions beg for the lower one. Life will always test your discipline through emotion. You'll feel overwhelmed. You'll feel lazy. You'll feel tempted, you'll feel discouraged. These feelings are not signs to stop. They are opportunities to prove your discipline. They are the moments that separate those who dream from those who achieve. Anyone can act when they feel good, but the ones who change their lives are the ones who act when they don't. That is the essence of discipline overriding emotion. The reality is this: you cannot build greatness on the shaky ground of emotion. You can only build it on the solid rock of discipline. Emotion says, do what feels good now. Discipline says, do what creates good later. Emotion says, protect yourself from discomfort. Discipline says, lean into discomfort to grow. Emotion says, rest now, you've earned it. Discipline says, push now, because the vision is bigger than comfort. And in that battle, the one who chooses discipline wins every single time. Success is built on action, not moods, because moods are temporary, unreliable, and often misleading, while action is the only force that creates tangible results in life. People often wait for the perfect mood to strike before they take a step toward their goals, but waiting on moods is like waiting on the weather. You have no control over it, and you'll spend your life stalled. Action is the great equalizer, the thing that separates those who only dream from those who actually achieve. You can have all the talent, all the ideas, all the potential in the world, but if you only act when you feel like it, you'll never get beyond mediocrity. The people who rise are the ones who act consistently, regardless of whether their mood is excited, tired, scared, or uninspired. Think about how moods play tricks on the human mind. In the morning, you may feel motivated and set ambitious goals, but by afternoon, after stress or fatigue is set in, you may no longer feel like following through. If your success depends on that mood, you'll sabotage yourself every single time. Action is what cuts through the noise of your moods. When you take action, you move forward whether you're in the mood or not. And once you start, your mood often shifts to match the action. Action creates momentum, momentum creates progress, and progress shifts your emotional state. But if you wait for your mood to change first, you may be waiting forever. Every great achievement in history came because someone acted when it wasn't convenient, when it wasn't comfortable, when the mood wasn't right. Entrepreneurs didn't build empires by waiting until they felt ready. Athletes didn't break records by waiting until they felt like training. Artists didn't create masterpieces by waiting until inspiration struck. They acted, they showed up, they kept moving. Success is never about what you feel in a moment. It's about what you repeatedly do despite the moment. The danger of living by moods is that moods are heavily influenced by external factors beyond your control. A comment from someone can ruin your mood. A setback can drain your mood. A small discomfort can derail your mood. If you allow those shifts to dictate your behavior, your entire life becomes a reflection of circumstance rather than choice. Action is the antidote to this. When you act regardless of mood, you declare that you are bigger than circumstance. You declare that your decisions are not at the mercy of how you happen to feel today. You put yourself in control instead of handing control over to fleeting emotional states. Action also has the power to transform moods. How many times have you dreaded going to the gym but felt incredible once you started moving? How many times have you procrastinated on a task but felt relief and energy once you began? This is the paradox. People wait for the right mood to act, but it's the action itself that generates the right mood. Success is built by those who understand this truth and refuse to sit around waiting for inspiration. They act first and the emotion catches up. Later, moods love to exaggerate. They tell you things like, "You're too tired. You're not ready. It's not the right time." They convince you to stay comfortable, to delay, to quit. But moods are liars, because as soon as you push through with action, you realize you had more energy than you thought. You were more capable than you felt, and it was the perfect time to start. Moods can make mountains out of molehills, but action shrinks them back down to size. Action reveals that most of the barriers were just illusions created by a temporary emotional state. The people who live by moods are inconsistent, unreliable, and easily derailed. One day they're on fire, the next day they disappear. One day they're disciplined, the next day they're making excuses. You can't build anything lasting on that kind of inconsistency. But those who live by action create reliability. You can count on them because they can count on themselves. They don't need to check their mood to know whether they'll follow through. They've made action the standard, not the mood. Success doesn't care how you feel. Success doesn't wait for you to be in the mood. Success only responds to what you do. You can't deposit moods into a bank account. You can't build a business on moods. You can't create a legacy on moods, but you can build all of those things on consistent action. Every step compounds, every action layers on the last, every disciplined choice builds momentum. The castle of success is built brick by brick, action by action, not mood by mood. Action also earns respect. People respect those who show up, who execute, who follow through. Nobody respects someone who only acts when it's easy, who only works when they're motivated, who only commits when it feels good. The world rewards those who can push past moods and still deliver. In every industry, the reliable performers rise above the erratic talents. Talent might dazzle for a moment, but action sustained over time beats talent that depends on mood. That is why consistency beats intensity every time. When you build your life on action, you stop being a victim of your inner storms. You stop being tossed back and forth by moods you can't control. Instead, you become grounded, steady, dependable. You know that regardless of whether you wake up tired or energized, inspired or discouraged, you will still act. And that makes you unstoppable, because most people quit when the mood leaves them. Most people quit when excitement fades. Most people quit when fear shows up. But if you are the one who acts anyway, you outlast them all. Action is not glamorous. It doesn't always feel exciting. Sometimes it's repetitive. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it feels like nothing is happening. But action compounds in silence. Every repetition, every step, every decision to move forward when you didn't feel like it is stacking momentum beneath the surface. And one day, the results break through so big that everyone calls it success. But by then you know the truth. It wasn't luck. It wasn't talent. It wasn't mood. It was action. Stop negotiating with your feelings. Commit to execution, because every time you allow yourself to bargain with your emotions, you weaken your discipline, you slow your momentum, and you teach yourself to depend on comfort instead of commitment. Negotiating with feelings is what most people do when they wake up in the morning and hear the alarm. They start an inner dialogue. Do I really need to get up now? Maybe just 10 more minutes. I'll do it later. That small negotiation may feel harmless, but it creates a habit of giving feelings power over actions. The moment you let that voice win, you set the tone for the rest of your day, your week, and ultimately your life. Greatness doesn't come from negotiation. It comes from decisive execution. Feelings are masters of persuasion. They'll try to convince you that you deserve a break, that it's okay to skip today, that no one will notice if you slack off just this once. But every time you listen, you reinforce the idea that feelings are the authority, not your commitments. Execution, on the other hand, is cold, clear, and final. Execution says, I don't care how I feel right now, this is what gets done. That mindset separates those who wish from those who achieve. When you commit to execution, you silence the inner lawyer that's always trying to argue on behalf of your emotions. You cut off the option to delay or make excuses. Most people lose not because they don't have goals, but because they negotiate themselves out of achieving them. They know what they need to do, but when discomfort shows up, they start debating. Should I do it now or later? Should I push harder or take it easy? Should I keep going or quit? Every second spent negotiating with yourself is wasted energy that could have been spent executing. The people who dominate in life have eliminated this negotiation process. They don't wake up and wonder if they'll work out. It's already decided. They don't debate whether to show up. It's already decided. They don't waste time asking, do I feel like it? They act because commitment has already spoken louder than emotion. When you stop negotiating with feelings, you become free. It may sound like discipline is restriction, but it's actually the opposite. Negotiating with feelings keeps you trapped because you're always questioning, hesitating, and second guessing. You never move forward with clarity because you're stuck in emotional debates. Execution frees you because the decision is made once and for all. You already know what needs to happen, and you simply do it without overthinking. That simplicity is power. It saves energy, it saves time, and it builds trust with yourself. The danger of negotiation is that feelings are always more persuasive in the moment than logic. At night, you may logically plan to wake up early and crush your goals, but in the morning your feelings whisper that you need more sleep, that 5 more minutes won't hurt, that today can be an exception. And if you entertain that negotiation, feelings will almost always win. The mind is clever at justifying weakness when you give it room to argue. The only way to win is to refuse the debate altogether. Once the alarm rings, you get up. Once the time arrives, you execute. No conversation, no questions, no deals with yourself. Execution doesn't care about your feelings. Execution doesn't need your permission. Execution is about showing up and taking action no matter what. That is why people who commit to execution rise faster than those who rely on motivation. Motivation is a nice bonus, but it's unreliable. Execution is what produces results, and results create momentum, and momentum creates the feelings people were waiting for in the first place. The irony is that the emotions everyone chases, confidence, pride, fulfillment, don't come before execution, they come after it. But if you let emotions lead, you'll never get to that point because you'll negotiate your way out of taking the very actions that would have created them. Consider an athlete training for competition. If they only trained when they felt like it, they would never reach peak performance. There are days when their body aches, when their mind is tired, when their motivation is low. But the champions commit to execution. They do the work whether they feel like it or not. They know the body follows the standard, not the mood. The same principle applies in every area of life. Entrepreneurs who commit to execution build businesses, even through stress and setbacks. Artists who commit to execution create work consistently instead of waiting for inspiration. Leaders who commit to execution keep showing up when others crumble. Every time you negotiate with your feelings, you delay your destiny, you push back progress, you shrink your potential, you lower your standards. But every time you choose execution, you take ownership of your life. You move forward, even if it's one small step. You build a reputation with yourself as someone who can be trusted, someone who follows through, someone who acts regardless of the inner storm. That self-trust compounds. It becomes identity. You stop being someone who sometimes gets things done, and you become someone who always does. The truth is, negotiation with feelings is nothing more than self-sabotage in disguise. It feels harmless because it sounds reasonable. I'll do it later. I'll wait until I'm ready. I'll start tomorrow. But behind every excuse is the same pattern: delay, avoidance, and regret. Execution destroys that pattern because it doesn't wait for perfect timing. Execution doesn't care about later, it cares about now. And once you take action, even imperfect action, you build momentum that feelings can no longer stop. The mind becomes sharper when you commit to execution. You stop entertaining weakness. You stop feeding doubt. You create a direct link between decision and action. And that makes you unstoppable. When others are hesitating, you're moving. When others are debating, you're executing. When others are stuck in their feelings, you're already creating results. That difference compounds over time until the gap between you and everyone else becomes undeniable. Legacies are created by consistency, not comfort, because comfort never produces growth, comfort never pushes boundaries, and comfort never demands the kind of discipline required to build something that lasts. Comfort is seductive. It whispers to you that you've done enough, that you deserve to relax, that you don't need to push today, that tomorrow is a better time to get serious. But every time you choose comfort over consistency, you weaken the foundation of what you are building. A legacy is not built in bursts of effort, followed by long stretches of neglect. It is built in the quiet, repeated, disciplined actions that stack day after day, year after year. Comfort might give you relief in the short term, but consistency gives you pride in the long term. Comfort tells you to take the easy road, but consistency tells you to walk the hard road every single day until it becomes second nature. Comfort says you've earned the right to coast, but consistency says the work isn't done yet. Comfort is about feeling good now, but consistency is about building something that will outlive you. Every great legacy you've ever admired was created not because someone chose the easy option, but because they chose the consistent one. The athlete who trains when no one is watching, the entrepreneur who keeps grinding through setbacks, the artist who creates even when inspiration is absent, all of them chose consistency over comfort. The truth is, comfort is a trap. It feels safe, but it keeps you stuck. It feels pleasant, but it robs you of progress. Comfort gives you the illusion of satisfaction, but it leaves you unfulfilled because deep down you know you are capable of more. Consistency, on the other hand, may feel demanding, but it is the only path that delivers real freedom. When you are consistent, you gain mastery. You take control of your habits, your craft, your future. That is the soil where legacies grow, not in the shallow ground of comfort. Legacies require endurance, and endurance requires consistency. It's not enough to show up once in a while with a burst of energy or a wave of motivation. Anyone can do that. The world is full of people who start strong but disappear when it gets hard. A legacy is reserved for those who show up relentlessly, even when they are tired, even when they are uninspired, even when no one is applauding. The repetition of consistent effort is what builds strength, resilience, and credibility. People may notice you in a moment of glory, but what they are really seeing is the product of countless unseen moments where you chose discipline over ease. Comfort will always tempt you to take shortcuts, but shortcuts never build legacies. They create temporary wins, surface-level results, things that fade as quickly as they appear. Consistency builds the deep roots that keep your legacy standing long after the excitement has passed. The most respected individuals in history are remembered not because they did one thing once, but because they repeatedly embodied their values, their craft, and their mission. They were consistent in the face of challenges, and that consistency became their identity. Consistency also builds trust. When people see that you are steady, that you show up, that you deliver over and over again, they begin to trust you, and that trust becomes part of your legacy. Comfort cannot create trust because comfort makes you unpredictable. Some days you'll show up, some days you won't, depending on how you feel. But consistency makes you reliable, and reliability is the cornerstone of influence. Legacies are not given, they are earned by proving day after day that you can be counted on. Comfort is selfish, but consistency is generous. Comfort is about your immediate pleasure, your temporary relief, your need to avoid difficulty. Consistency is about the value you bring, the example you set, the mark you leave. When you choose comfort, you might feel good for a moment, but you rob the world of your full potential. When you choose consistency, you contribute something lasting that others can build on, something that impacts beyond your lifetime. That is the essence of legacy. Think about it. No one remembers the person who quit when it got hard. No one celebrates the person who gave into comfort. No one honors the person who was inconsistent. But the ones who are remembered, the ones who are celebrated, the ones who leave their mark are those who pushed when it hurt, those who kept going when it was easier to stop, those who chose consistency when everyone else chose comfort. They may not have always been the most talented, but they were the most relentless. Comfort kills ambition because ambition requires hunger, and comfort numbs that hunger. Comfort tells you that where you are is good enough, but consistency tells you that where you are is only the beginning. Comfort settles, but consistency stretches. Comfort keeps you ordinary, but consistency makes you extraordinary. A legacy is never created in the ordinary, it is only forged in the extraordinary effort of consistent pursuit. Consistency also builds momentum, and momentum is unstoppable once it's created. Every small, consistent action compounds over time until the results become undeniable. At first, it feels invisible, like nothing is happening. But consistency is stacking bricks even when you can't see the wall yet. One day, the wall is towering and people call it success, but you know the truth. It wasn't one big action. It was 1,000 small ones executed consistently. Comfort interrupts that process. It breaks the chain. It destroys momentum. Every time you choose comfort, you reset the progress you could have built. But every time you choose consistency, you strengthen the chain until it becomes unbreakable. Legacies require sacrifice, and sacrifice means letting go of comfort. You cannot have both. You can live for comfort, or you can live for legacy, but you cannot live for both. Comfort will give you a pleasant life, but legacy will give you a meaningful one. Comfort will give you memories, but legacy will give you history. Comfort will fade with time, but legacy will stand the test of time. The choice is yours every single day in the small decisions and the habits in the moments when no one is watching. Will you choose comfort or will you choose consistency?